Hi, this is Chris of Wilson Wildlife Sculpture and Wood Carving, and I'm real excited about this video. I'm going to show some painting techniques, and I'm excited by it also because I sold this sculpture, my hummingbird on foxglove, called Foxglove Flurry. And if you watch some previous videos, I showed how I was making it, how I fabricated it and defied gravity with the piece. Now I have a gold base, but originally it had kind of a distressed white base. And I didn't really like it. I was gonna put gold over it, which I tried, and I just repainted the whole thing. I actually painted it bronze, and I added gold highlights to it. So that's with a video I have talking about my hummingbirds and an owl sculpture, but I also talk about defying gravity and how these birds come apart, and this comes apart. So that's gonna be a huge advantage when I ship this work because this is all carved wood. There's metal for the branch and the bird's bill, reinforcing each flower. I use square tubing, which I explained, and that all helps so I can support the birds, defy gravity, as well as take my works apart. So I have a show in just a couple weeks, one of my largest shows of the year. Actually, I've got a few shows coming up. You can check my schedule at Wilson Wildlife Sculpture. And so what do I do when I sell a piece when I'm counting on displaying it? Well, I knew this was going to be a popular piece because I've made it before with white foxglove. It's very challenging to make, and I'm going to show you some tips in this video in showing how I paint it. So I decided to make two. Now each one is one of a kind in original, but I'm going to show a second one and actually demonstrate on this one because if the work is sold and I'm happy with it, I'm not touching it, okay? It doesn't make sense to try to improve it because you can overwork things. An artist has to know when to stop with their work, okay? However, when I took pictures of my other hummingbird, and I have it was equally interesting piece of foxglove, which I'll show you, I noticed that it could use a little more pizzazz and to fill some of the negative space. So I'm gonna share that with you. In that video. So if you gain value in this video, please support me and like the video, comment, and even better, subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it. So here's the piece. What I actually did was, since I already had the bird mounted and the flowers done, but I wanted to add leaves. Okay, it was all painted, and so I was trying to figure out how I could make it, because this is all silver soldered metal work, which was done outside before it's painted. It's very difficult to do after you paint it, to use a torch on a piece, especially of this value. So I'm going to take this apart and show you. So this is a lot of times what I do with my works. I mask works. I'll put tape over, I'll cover things so I can work on different areas. In this case, just these leaves down here. So I show you the whole piece. I'm very, very careful with these pieces because these works sell for thousands of dollars. And I've made many hummingbirds over my career, many birds and wildlife. So I hope you gain insight from my experience. So these are made of brass, which I've embossed the texture. Okay, the flowers are carved in wood as well as the hummingbirds carved in wood. The habitat is all painted with acrylics, which I'm going to show you. I also use oil on the birds, and I have videos you can purchase on my website on carving a realistic bobwhite quail, as well as making magnolia flowers, both tulip magnolia and the southern magnolia. So let's get into a demo here so I can show you some techniques and you can learn from me. Liquitex is one of my favorite paints, especially the gesso. And I prime my work first by painting it white. Everything looks brighter. So a little trick to get iridescence and get your works to have a lot of brilliance is to get contrast with your work. Not only do I use gesso and prime it, I also make shadows. And so I'm very concerned about the value of the color. That's the relative lightness or darkness. That's how you get your works pop. If you look at each flower, each one is painted like a value scale from light to dark. Even the hummingbird's got lots of shadows besides colors, and it's got highlights as well. And I'm going to show you how I do that in this video, so stay tuned with me just on these leaves. Now this is just primed. Okay, I prime it outdoors. That's why I covered it, so I can spray, use the spray enamel on it. It's difficult in this weather because spraying outside, you want it to be at least 50 degrees, and also you don't want it to be humid. And we have one of these rare January days where it's gotten 60 degrees, which was nice, but we've had torrential rain, so it's very humid here in the south. And it's also a problem in the summer because the paint can't bubble up and raise up. But these are okay. This worked. I do have a couple areas where you can see a little bit of the brass showing, the metal, and I usually try to get it all in one coat so you don't see the bare metal. That's how I prime it. Although you don't want to prime it too much where the paint runs. Okay, you just want to have gentle passes. And so priming your work is important, but I will also use gesso here, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now this piece goes in this base here. Let me set this up for you. And while I do that, I will mix paints and show you how I do that as well, and get the value and intensity and the right hue of each color. So I gotta be really careful with the other hummingbird because it is now sold. I don't want anything to happen to it. But let's see if you can see this piece. Yeah, this one is gonna be equally as dynamic. It's different though, because this is a more fuchsia colored, that's more violet colored foxglove. So I use a metal branch here, and let me just look to see where the hummingbird goes. Yeah, it goes in this one. There you go. I really like this series because it's very, very dynamic, and I can actually turn these birds, okay, as if they're, you know, I mean, they're basically acrobats in midair. So it's amazing what hummingbirds can do. So in making this piece, you know, this took months of work, but I'm just going to show you some techniques. When I look at the composition, what I was talking about is I wanted some more pizzazz and to fill this negative space. It was too linear, but now I'm going to bend these leaves a little bit because these are brass, very carefully so I don't lose the hummingbird. I'm going to bend these a little bit after priming them. Kind of echo some curves because they're too straight. I bend using 2 thumbs and index finger, both hands. I can also bend the stems, but I already put those in pretty good angles. And again, this was not easy because the piece was already painted. So I actually used JB Weld and I cold bonded it, okay, without using a torch. I drilled through this metal and then put this metal here and just JB welded it in place. Now the leaves are soldered in place, okay, but this is just JB welded in place because it works and it's not going anywhere. So there's good texture on these leaves, but it just needs more contrast, and I'm going to show you how I do that now. So one of the first things I do is I get a clean thing of water. I also have usually 2 things of water, and I will use different brushes here. This is both are flats, okay? This is a nylon, and this is a cheap old nylon brush. Dick Blick, it's an 8 flat, and this is a 4 Artist Loft. Basically very cheap brushes. But I like the soft nylon for washes, which I'm going to softly wash paint in there. And this one, it's a stiffer. This is old and kind of worn out because I rub a lot of paint off when I paint. I'm going to dry brush some techniques and get some highlights. I'm actually going to do that first and then do a wash. So let me show you that. I use yogurt containers for putting my paint in place. So here's one that already has a little bit of paint in here, has a little bit of yellows in there. I'm going to add some white to it, the gesso, because I know that dry brushes really well. And I'm not going to add, actually, there's a little bit of water in it, but I'm just going to add the tip of my brush, hit that gesso. You can see that. And then I'm going to pick up a little color at the bottom, a little bit of yellow and a little bit of green I have down there. Okay, make it a little more whiter. There we go. Now what I'm actually doing now is I'm removing most of the paint from the brush. This is called dry brushing. Okay, just back on the yogurt container. I want to save that paint. I'm going to take the hummingbird off now so that I don't make any mistakes. And drop the bird. And very carefully take this off. I'm going to start with the underside. That's a good place to start. A lot of times the underside is lighter, and this is a lighter color. So it's a lighter value and intensity. So I am going to try just dry brushing the highlights and just skimming that detail. Yeah, this is working really well. I don't know if you can see that here. Just picking those highlights up because I embossed it using a round ball engraving tool. That's how I emboss copper. This is brass, though. It has a little more spring to it. I actually dry brushed these also with a little bit of gold paint. Okay, the ends of the foxglove. I'm going to do the same up here because that looked good. Usually the top of the leaf is darker. That's why I started on the underside. So I'm just kind of getting the high ridges of the piece. And let's see. I'll get it where it joins a little bit. I'll have to use some of that gold paint I used before. Okay, nice thing about this Liquitex gesso, this is the best gesso, by the way. You can buy cheap gessos, but the Liquitex professional gesso is going to cover better than any other gesso on the market. And I have years of experience practicing that. It adheres well to metal, it adheres well to wood. Now I do seal the wood first, but I seal the metal by using spray enamels, and that's how I first started it. Okay, but the gesso is going to give you a little more tooth. And now I could airbrush this on, which I do with the leaves and habitat, but I'm showing you some other techniques here. Dry brushing, and now I'm going to show some washes. Let me show you first how I mix colors. Okay, I'm going to use this Deco Art Traditions Artist Acrylic Paint. This is a medium green, pretty intense. Actually, it's probably too bright, but I'm going to try it. I'll probably dull it down a little bit, and I'm not going to use that much. It's pretty intense there. It looks too Christmassy, and most greens aren't this green in nature. They have more yellow to them or a little bit of red. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit of red to this to dull it down. Just add a little red, and red is the complementary color of green. And that when you add the color complement, it always makes the color grayer or less vibrant, as well as more natural. Okay, I'm going to use a different brush now. I'm going to use this soft nylon brush, and I'm going to add more water to this mix. Actually, quite a bit of water. Almost like a watercolor painting, because I'm going to gradually build color. Now, I just add the tip of my brush into that red to get a little bit of red so that I could dull the green a little bit, make it a little more natural. I didn't add much. Now I get on my finger, so that's not good. But this is my palette, basically. I always have a paper towel handy, so wipe the little mistake off my finger. And I'm going to paint this using this wash coat and watch what happens. By getting that texture ahead of time, it's going to soak in those grooves. Look at that. It looks much more vibrant. I'm going to do each one. Nice thing about acrylics is they dry fast. Oils can take days to dry. But by adding a lot of water, it's going to take a little time. So I'm going to just put it on the top surface for now, not the bottom, because I don't want the bottom that green. Okay, and then I'm going to just hold this. You can use a hairdryer if you want, but I'm going to hold it. I'm just going to look at it and keep moving around as it dries so that it will go in different valleys, hills and valleys of this leaf. And I can do this multiple times. In fact, the more you do it, the softer, more realistic it gets. Now, I think it needs more value contrast, so I could add a little bit more red, a little more dull. Just a couple of areas, I'm going to actually make it darker, because red will not only dull the color, it'll darken it as well. So just a little bit in some areas, like it's aged a little bit. Okay, see, I just did that with the tip of my brush there. So I even have a wormhole there. Now there you got a little red in there, but I can easily paint that out because the surface is wet now. Very different than the first technique with dry brushing. This is called a wash technique. And I was actually wet blending a little bit of red in there. So yeah, I picked up a little red there. This has a little fuchsia color in there, so that looks good. I'm going to add a little more red in the bottom of this one, dull that leaf down. Now, if it dries, it's hard to do. So you want to do it while it's wet. Pick up those colors. I mentioned you can also airbrush. That also works very well. But the advantage of this, it gets in the hills and valleys really well and looks much more realistic and natural. Airbrushing can look a little too fuzzy and fake. So it's a technique that it works, especially for habitat. But this technique works equally as well. I'm going to put maybe just a really thin wash in the bottom because the top is drying, and I want to emphasize that texture too in the bottom, but maybe not make it as green or distinct. I'm also kind of tired of holding it here, so what I can do is just put it in the base. The only thing is the paint will sink down towards the bottom, so you probably want to move it around like this a little bit more. Okay, because if you just put it in one area and let it dry, it's all going to seep down and be darker at the bottom. And so I like to move it around a little bit, and actually a hairdryer works well. But hairdryer can crack gesso, so it's better to just, move it around and be patient. Sometimes that's patience is a virtue. So I'm going to cover my paint here. Again, these yogurt containers, my paints can last for weeks. I did painting demos before, and they last for weeks in that. And I'm just basically looking at the leaf, and I'm moving it around, and I'm trying to get the paint to flow on those valleys. That's the texture I added to the metal leaf before I painted it. So it's going to take a couple coats. One thing about the spray painting is you don't want to spray paint like the next day. Spray paint, this is still actually, I painted this a couple days ago, but if I were just to spray with paints, you want to allow a good week in between. Either do it within the first hour or wait like a week almost. So yeah, it takes a long time for enamels to dry. But I find in a couple days it's okay to go back over with acrylic paint, and acrylic looks a lot softer than enamels. Okay, so here's the leaf before. Okay, here's one, and then here's the finished leaf, what I just did. Let me show a close-up of that here so you can see. There you go. Hopefully you can see the difference there as it's moving around. And you can get all different kinds of acrylics. Liquitex is my favorite. Minim acrylics is very affordable from Spain. I demonstrated that in the past. I also use Winsor Newton, Grumbacher. This Chroma acrylics works well. Even some craft brands of paint you can get, like Craft Smart. What is this one here? Folk Art acrylic. They dry flat, and they're already kind of pre-mixed. But as an artist, I always mix my own colors. I usually don't use paint straight out of the tube. I'm looking at nature. I'm trying to get good contrast. And okay, the paint's drying in some areas, so I'm consciously got to look at this and you got to move it around. And I painted the underside and made it even more challenging, so I got to look for both sides. So that's a little bit about paint. You can use all different brands. You can mix different brands. If it's acrylic, you can't mix acrylic and oils together. However, you can use acrylics over oils. Unlike most people say, you have to do oils last because you can't. That's right. It usually does better if you do oils last, but you can use thick acrylics like dry brushing over oils, and I do that quite a bit. You just can't do like washes of paint, which I just demonstrated over oils, because that'll beat up, and that's what would happen here. However, I've done that too for experimental effects, and it works. And so whatever you learn in art school or whatever, because I learned you can't do that. Actually, you can if you experiment and practice. It's just a matter of the effect you want. I want a nice, soft, realistic appearance. So this comes with tons of experience, and these wash layers is one great way to do it. So I hope this video gives you some tips on how you can paint and compose sculptures like this. If you find value, please hit that subscribe button. And if you find ways I can improve, please comment on my videos and like them as well. Thanks a lot for your support and for subscribing. Have a great day.